Hello chess friends, and welcome to Jozarov Chess Channel, and welcome to a very special game from the FIDE Candidates in 2022. So we're now in the last round and we're following now an epic game between Liren and Hikaru Nakamura. So first of all, we want to congratulate again Jan Nepomniachtchi for winning the FIDE Candidates in 2022. Jan deserved this win for sure because he played really the best chess, converted many slightly better positions into wins, which is really incredible, but also played really brilliant attacks. Also defended maybe slightly worse positions, which is also very important, and I think Jan Nepomniachtchi deserves really a new match against Magnus Carlsen. I think that Magnus cannot decline this Nepo. Nepo also break a world record here in this candidate in 2022 because he gained 9.5 points out of the 40 rounds, and no one in chess history gained 9.5 points in the candidate, so it's quite an impressive result. Nepo gained also many rating points, so he's now just a couple of points far away from 800 rating points. So it's really remarkable what Nepo did here, and I think Magnus Carlsen cannot and should not decline a new world championship match against Jan Nepomniachtchi. So okay, but still we don't want to rush. It's Magnus' decision, of course, what he wants to do with his career, and of course what he wants to do for the chess community. I don't want to criticize or something. I'm just saying what are the possible possibilities, and as I said, this game is quite interesting then, because for instance, if Magnus declines, for instance, to play against Nepo a new world championship match, then here one of these two guys, so Liren or Hikaru Nakamura, could also play in the world championship match, because then the best two players out of the candidates are playing the world championship match, so which is really incredible. So before this round, Hikaru Nakamura had half of the point more than Liren. Liren is playing here with the white pieces, so Ding had to win now the game in order to make it on the second place. Really it was a tense game, so be prepared. This was simply again chat from another dimension. So let's check out now the game. So Ding opened with the move d4. Hikaru's response after move d4 was knight to f6, c4, e6. We have knight to f3, the anti-Nimzo or counter Nimzo Indian setup, not allowing some bishop to b4 after potential knight to c3. So we have d5 transposition into the queen's gambit decline, knight to c3, 3 knights variation, and now after move c5 we have the semi-tarrasch defense. And this was, I think, a good choice by Hikaru Nakamura, where he's trying to go into symmetrical lines, into forcing lines, and maybe into drawish lines, because many times the semi-tarrasch you play if you want maybe to get a draw. So okay, here e3 was played, also c takes d5 are the main lines, e3 and c takes d5. I myself like more this line, c takes d5. I like to play it more often, because after e takes d5, at least what you're gaining here is an asymmetrical position. That's, I think, a position that you want to play if you want to win. But okay, here Ding played a more symmetrical line with the move e3. So we have here knight to c6, so you see we have really now pure symmetry now all over the board. So we have now the move a3 by Liren. He's waiting now the bishop to come maybe to d6, then he'll play d takes c5, bishop to c5, and then he could get an extra tempo. He could expand then on the queen side with the potential b4 move. So we have d takes c4, bishop to c4, a6 by Hikaru, so he's trying to do the same, getting an extra tempo against the bishop on c4. We have bishop to d3 by Liren, and now b5, d takes c5, bishop to c5. We have b4 kicking with the bishop to e7, and now kingside castling by Liren. So okay, this position is nothing special. So you see, it's a pure symmetry. When you watch the pawn structure, it's a pure symmetry. Both players have, I think, good development. The knights are on natural squares, the bishops are perfectly fine. These bishops, the bishop on b7 and the bishop on b2, will become then also the best pieces on the board, but it's a pure equality, I think, and nothing special for each player. So here in the continuation, bishop to b7, we have bishop to b2, kingside castling, and now knight to e4. This was now an interesting idea here by Liren. At least he's trying now to compete here on this diagonal. He's trying to challenge somehow this bishop on b7, and if you don't react, then some ideas could work. Rook to c1, and then maybe to occupy the weak square on c5. So as I said, here it's all about piece activity and who is going to occupy some weaknesses in the position, because these are open spaces, so you can find many targets in your opponent's position. So that's why also natural ideas are, of course, to occupy them. So in the continuation, we have knight to e4, bishop to e4. We have now f5 by Hikaru. This was also a very interesting line that has never been played in chess history, so it's quite a theoretical novelty that Hikaru pulled off here, and I think he had somewhere prepared this position. Of course, the downside is that you are weakening a little bit this diagonal, but actually it's nothing special, because still with king to f7 you can protect this, and what the cool part is that you can also trade off the queens, which is a further simplification. When the queens are off the board, then we don't have so many complications, so it means that it could be a drawish position, and it's of course perfectly fine for Hikaru Nakamura. So bishop to b1 was played by Ding. He's trying to remaneuver this bishop to a2, where it's of course again targeting the king on g8. So in the continuation, we have queen to d1, rook to d1, and now Ding has lost a little bit the rook connection, so that's why Hikaru sent some blood, and he's trying now of course to occupy the only open file, the d file. So okay, the c file is also open, but at least the knight is standing here in the way. So we have bishop to a2, we have king to f7, we have now h4 here. Ding Liren is maybe trying to get knight to g5, an annoying check, and now this knight would be supported. Maybe this line is forcing black to give up the bishop pair. Then with the bishops like this, white should be then slightly better. So here in the continuation, we have h6, so see Hikaru is preventing this idea. Rook from d to c1, and now bishop to d6, and here things are getting more and more tensed, I think. Also, what could have happened is this line, bishop to f6, which seemed to me in the beginning that this could be again sort of a forcing drawish line, but Ding has, I think, here really prepared a beautiful tactical shot with knight to d4. And now if you still want to maybe stay with your bishop pair on the board, then you get this one, you see, with rook to c7, at this bishop on b7 will be taken. So now here in the continuation, we can at least take one of these bishops in the near future, bishop to d4. But still, even in this line, I think black has a solid position. I think this is still also a drawish line. But okay, here Hikaru played bishop to d6 instead of bishop to f6. So we have here rook to c2. Here Ding is preparing now to double up rooks on the c file, and now comes what is, in my opinion, maybe a slightly unnecessary move. We don't want to call it even an inaccuracy, mistake, or blunder, but maybe it was really unnecessary to play the game like this. There is now the beautiful line with the move a5, and this move would be really brilliant, I think, here for Hikaru Nakamura. I think this move is letting now the position explode all over the board, because what Ding has prepared, of course, with the move rook to c2 is a battery on the c file. But actually, this should not be such a huge problem for Hikaru Nakamura. I think this wasn't played in the game, but this was really a potential continuation, because actually black can simply go with a takes b4. You can maybe have your fun. You can take out the knight on c6 with take, and now you can take another pawn. And look at this. Okay, white has two minor pieces for the lost rook, but I don't like this two connected passers. So now I think white would not have fun in this particular position. So as I said, maybe this a5 would cause many positional problems in Dingler's position. I'm not saying this is a winning continuation, but it's, I think, more interesting. At least the position is not symmetrical anymore. I really hate to play, and I hate sometimes even to watch the symmetrical position, because many times nothing can happen. So many times when I analyze now the game, I just search for ideas how the position is not going to be symmetrical in order to spice it up somehow. So because it wasn't really such a dynamic game, and we have to really say it, but we have to say it's a tense game. The stakes are high in this game, so that's why no one wanted to risk anything. So it's quite understandable why they choose to play this opening line. And so as I said, here after move rook to c2, Hikaru maneuvered the knight to e7, but I really think that a5 would have been really a beautiful dynamic move. So okay, it allows now Ding to take over here with the move knight to d4. So the knight is getting centralized, and now you see the pawn on e6 is hanging. So that's why bishop to d5, bishop to d5, knight to d5, and now rook from a to c1. So you see Ding is taking over. So we have here now maybe really the first real inaccuracy, I think, by Hikaru Nakamura, rook to d7. And I think when you play such open positions, when the rooks are very, very important in the game, you don't want to lose your rook connection. And that's exactly what happened here in Hikaru's game. He lost a little bit the rook connection. I think that knight to b6 is here perfectly fine. You can be challenged with knight to here with knight to c6, but still we can compete on the c file. Notice that now whatever happens, maybe here a check can happen, but it doesn't matter because your rook is twice protected by the rook and also by the knight. So tactical shot on the c file is not working. But actually with the move knight to b6, you can finally maybe occupy the weak c4 square. That's the beauty about this line, I think. So I think this was slightly better for Hikaru. This would simplify the game further and go maybe and the game would, I think, go into more drawish lines. But okay, here after rook from a to c1, Hikaru played rook to d7, knight to b3. Now Ding is the one that wants to occupy this weakness on c5. We have bishop to e7 and now h5, and this was very, very risky by Ding, because we have to say it now, in some occasions knight to f6 could work, and now the pawn is weak. I'm not sure what happened here to Ding. This was his first really inaccurate move. This was really unnecessary, because you can fix simply the position with the move g3. You don't have to rush here. Still, of course, in the near future you can play h5 whenever you want to play, but it was really unnecessary to fix to play the move. You can really fix the position now, as we said, knight to c5 and similar stuff. But okay, here after move h5, Hikaru played now bishop to f6, although he could have probably even attacked the pawn immediately. Now Ding would probably have to even give up the bishop for a knight, and now after bishop to f6, okay, I'm not saying this is winning for black, but still I kind of like, you know, black's position more, because these are pawns on both sides. And of course, if now the rooks are off the board, we have to also notice a very important thing: the bishop can always attack these two pawns. So if, for instance, you could just imagine this position without the rooks on the board, then the bishop can come on b2, and this is, I think, a good position for black. So as I said, this g3 was really, really unnecessary, but here Hikaru didn't play the move knight to f6. He played bishop to f6, and okay, bishop to d4 was played by Ding Liren. We have e5, we have bishop to c5, and now comes bishop to d8. So the bishop gets now on this diagonal. Probably what Hikaru Nakamura tried to play is now bishop to b6, forcing a further simplification of further trades of pieces. So we have here now rook to d2, we have a knight to f6, and now rook takes d7, knight to d7, and now rook to d1, again attacking the knight, and now knight to f6. So bishop to d6. So you see this pawn on e5 is hanging. Of course, if you take knight to h5, then this pawn will be taken, and suddenly you see the bishop is taking over, the knight will come on c5, rook to d7 is a huge positional threat. So taking out the pawn immediately is not working here for black. So that's why knight to g4 by Hikaru, f3 is not possible by Ding. Then you lose, of course, the e3 pawn. So in the continuation, bishop to c5, bishop to h4, attacking now the pawn on on f2. We have now rook to d7, a check, king to g8, and now g3, kicking with the bishop. And now comes the critical moment of this game. So here Hikaru played the bishop to g5. It's one of the critical moments, we have to say it. He's trying now desperately to play the move f4 to force here further trades of pawns, and then maybe afterwards he wants to play knight to f6. But what he should have played, and I think it's really necessary, you have to now finally compete with this rook. So okay, maybe these are not the optimal squares for the minor pieces, and white has, I think, a slightly better activity with this knight and with the bishop, but this rook on a8 doesn't play through the whole game, so you have to include this game into the attack. So that's why rook to d8, it's at least forcing a further simplification. Now if you trade it off, you see bishop to d8, nothing special, and I think this is a perfect enough position for Hikaru where nothing can happen. Okay, still you have to calculate in this position, but at least the annoying rook on d7 is off the board. For instance, okay, white doesn't have to play the game like this, can also play maybe a rook to d6, then still bishop to g5 is now working. If, for instance, this pawn will be taken, then you lost a little bit the battle. Look at this, rook to d1, rook to b1, then we can play rook to b2. This pawn is weak, so we're now one that are attacking the position, although you have lost the pawn here from black's perspective, but at least you're having a beautiful piece activity. And I think this was really unnecessary what Hikaru did. Bishop to g5, it allows now here from king to f1 here. Here Ding could have played immediately also rook to b7, which is perfectly fine, but now after king to f1 we have bishop to d8. Again, Hikaru is not competing on the d file, which is really incredible. I'm not sure what happened here to Hikaru, why he didn't compete with this annoying rook on d7, and now finally Ding goes to b7 and has now simply a better rook, and you cannot compete with this rook anymore. And the most important thing is now that the pawn on g7 is such a vulnerable pawn. Now in the near future it can be maybe attacked with bishop to d4, and this was now the critical moment. As I said, the Hikaru had twice the opportunity to play rook to d8, didn't play that, and I think this is now a much better position for white. I'm not saying this is winning, but it's really complicated now for black to play this game. So here f4, we have g takes f4, e takes f4, but look at this now, even in this sequence now the diagonal will be opened, and it's now really a bad position for black. So we have now e4 by Ding Liren, bishop to f6, we have knight to d4, we have bishop to e8, and now king to g2, we have knight to e5, but now look at this, a beautiful square for the piece, knight to f5, and this g7 is now an obvious target here in Ding Liren's attack. So in the continuation we have f3, king to g3, knight to c4, attacking also now this weak pawn on a3, but it doesn't matter so much because, as we said, look at this, bishop on c5 active, knight on f5 active, rook on b7 active, the king is also very active, we can take out the pawn whenever we like, we can even include the king into the attack, so it's now a +2 evaluation for Ding Liren. So we have bishop to e7, now bishop to b7 was played by Hikaru. If you play bishop to e7, then of course knight takes e7, you cannot go in front of the rook because you have always some discovered threats. Now you can get maybe here, but again knight to f5 is working, and we'll take out now this pawn, then afterwards this pawn is weak, then afterwards also we can get the rook on the 6th rank. So again, the more active rook will probably win the game for white. So as I said, after move bishop to e7 here, Hikaru didn't want to trade off the pieces, but now king takes f3, bishop takes a3, and now king to g3, knight to e5, and now after bishop to c5 again, Ding is trying to get this bishop on this diagonal and simply targeting further the g7 square. The g7 is anyway attacked, so that's why knight to f7, but now f3, fixing now these two pawns, and here look at this, Ding has now perfect position, these two pawns are connected, this rook is still active. Now we want just to find a way how to attack this pawn further. So we have now bishop to c1, if you play bishop to b2 it doesn't matter, rook to a7 is going to happen, we still have our activity, so nothing changed basically in black's position. So we have bishop to c1 by Hikaru, we have rook to a7 anyway, we have bishop to d2, here Ding takes simply out the pawn on a7, pardon me, on a6, we have bishop to e1, a check, king to g2, bishop to c3. Now again Ding is playing very actively with the rook, so this knight is a little bit paralyzed, has to always stay on this very defensive square. We have knight to g5, here Hikaru protects now, but still this knight is simply out of game. So we have now knight to e7, so everything is good together here for Ding Liren. He creates now a annoying check, we have to play here king to h8, knight to g6, so we have here knight to e7. After a couple of perpetuals now Ding went on d5, so attacked the bishop escaped here by Hikaru to b2, we have rook to a2, we have bishop to c1, rook to c2, and after bishop to a3, here we have bishop to e3 by Ding Liren. In this position actually Hikaru even resigned. So why did he resign? Because look at this, whatever happens, look at this, if you stay with this position like this, maybe you're playing something like this, we'll simply take it out. I think this is the natural way to go. Look at this, the knight is protecting the pawn, the knight is centralized, you cannot even attack the knight with any minor pieces, and even if you escape, let's go back here with the move knight to e6, if you play knight to e6, still rook to a2 is going to happen, and again I think you get some tactical problems on the 7th rank. So this was really brutal what happened, I think, to Hikaru, where he missed twice the default exchange of rooks. I'm not sure why he didn't play that. He could have been on the 2nd place, which would be I think for him a huge result. No one thought, I think, that Hikaru could maybe even win the candidates, but he was really close, we have to say it, in the 2nd stage of this the event. Hikaru played really brilliant chess, but also Ding Liren in the second stage played really outstanding chess, and Ding Liren now finishes the candidate in 2022 on the second place. Congratulations also to Ding, especially when we know that he started with a loss against Jan Nepomniachtchi, which was, I think, a crushing moment for him, but now he finished on second place and has maybe even the opportunity to play against Jan Nepomniachtchi for the World Championship. I'm not sure what will happen, but as I said, this will be an epic era now for us to watch in the next World Championship match. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the game. I really enjoyed it a lot. I think we'll still cover more games from this event. We'll do maybe also some specials. We'll see. This is not it from the candidates in 2022, but this is so far from this game. Congratulations to Ding Liren on finishing on the second place. Okay, if you want to see more games from this event, check out also my coverage, some other games that we have seen from this event. Here's the link of our whole analysis, and if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.